We delve into the origin of the Cuckoos as Esme tries to bond with Lorna. Cate and Lauren track down Rebecca's doctor, and Jace still thinks he can be a good guy while working with some very bad people. Plus, Reid begins his mutant power training. It's a process. On this week's The Gifted, Season 2, Episode 6, iMprint. Hey everyone, D here, and welcome to this week's review of The Gifted. So yes, of course, spoilers ahead. Lots and lots of spoilers. Alright, so good episode this week. I really enjoyed this week's episode. Nothing really big happening. I mean, okay, I guess that's up to interpretation. Sorry, Shatter. But there were a lot of small, cool things going on. A lot of great, tiny moments. And I really enjoyed the pacing of this week's episode. I felt really that there wasn't a lot of dead time. There was a lot of cool movements, a lot of things happening, all really pushing and moving the larger story further forward. So really enjoyed how this week's episode sort of played itself out. And of course, one of the big things we got to dive into was the origin of the Frost sisters, the Cuckoos themselves, which was something I was hoping we'd get to find out a little bit more this season. So I'm glad we got a chance to get a little look into their past. And much like I had spoken about last week about hate being something learned, we find out that the Frost sisters weren't born evil. You know, some people are. Rebecca, maybe. But the Frost sisters, again, as when they were young, were compassionate, thoughtful, empathetic, something you actually might expect from telepaths. From when you could read people's minds, we can even read their emotions, their feelings. I mean, we don't know how much empathy they get into it. It seems to be more telepathic, but they could certainly feel fear that other people are feeling. They can certainly interpret that. So you would think that this would actually make them, in a way, more compassionate. But when you are grown in a lab for the purposes of evil, that compassion is quickly going to be trained out of you. And that is something that we find out is pretty much what happened. A very tragic story, actually. And I like how this, again, this all developed. What we've been seeing this season is the beginnings of Esme's rebellion, of her breaking away from necessarily the agenda of the inner circle and her sisters, really kind of establishing her own identity, which is something that would be, again, when you were cloned, you're really part of a group. But no, Esme here setting herself up a little bit more. I mean, part of it's physical, of course. She is the one that got burned by Marcos. So that she already has a physical difference from the rest of her sisters. And kind of harsh how they're just upset with her that because she's burned, they all got to wear long sleeves now. Last year's fashions because you let that light bright touch you. Whichever line that they use. So, yeah, again, all of this small little things starting to break away, to establish Esme as a little bit different, as sort of stepping away from her sisters. But I enjoyed kind of her connecting up with Lorna here, as trying to be a friend, trying to open up that compassionate level to her. We had something about her sisters mentioning a few episodes ago that her time spending alone with the rest of the mutants, you know, had damaged her, had made her more empathetic, made her a little bit weak. I don't think it's weak. I think it's strong. I think it gives her another source of strength to pull from. But I really have to say, I really enjoyed kind of the whole little bonding and history that we got. We got the history we got the little bit of the origin of the Frost sisters. We get a little connection here between Lorna and Esme. I mean, not totally smooth. it had its ups and downs. Obviously, chamomile, not liked by Lorna. But, I mean, again, and we have Lorna here in her own way, breaking away from the inner circle, wanting to know more. She is a leader. She doesn't like being kept in the dark. So it does kind of work well that both Esme and Lorna, in a way, sort of breaking off, having their own independence, would start to have this little bond going together. So enjoyed that whole bit of the episode with, definitely knew that there was trouble as soon as Esme started humming along that little tune. I was like, that's not going to end well. Now, it being a private tune that was taught by Lorna's mom, and she only sings it to Dawn when they're alone. I don't know, that's kind of a stretch. I think most lullabies people know. There's kind of a standard bit, and I would think that this wouldn't be something that Esme would, well, I don't know. You're a telepath, you pick up so many extra thoughts, maybe you don't always know what thoughts are coming into your head. But definitely saw that there was that was going to lead down to a dark road. Lorna certainly responding super strongly about it, defensively, and again, it sort of makes sense. She's not feeling super homey here in the inner circle. Definitely has the whole mother protective instinct going on, and feeling this sort of violation, especially by the Frost sisters, who she doesn't really totally trust. And Riva, who she definitely, I don't think, trusts at all. I think she's just here for the moment. Anyway, that was a great scene in the elevator with the sort of choking out of Esme. And then, of course, afterwards we get that little bit of extra story about them not being three. It wasn't triplets. There was septuplets. No, septuplets is 7. Cinque, 5 of them. I'll figure out my Latin later. So that, and that the 2 of the other sisters were left behind. Smart for a lab. Only bring out 3, leave the other 2 for leverage to kind of keep what ended up happening actually from happening. But yeah, so the 3 of them kill the doc, kill the guards. Beautiful little sequence there. They're evolving into their darker future selves. But because of that rebellion, they do end up losing the 2 sisters, and that connection again with Esme there, 2 of her sisters feeling that death, feeling that loss, and at the same time having felt the love of a mother that she'd never known because she's a clone from little baby Dawn as she connected in the head, I think was a really nice final scene there of Esme saying, no matter what happens, whether you stay or you go, I am on your side. I will always protect your daughter. We can ask the question, and it's easy to do so, is she being truthful about that? Is this a level of manipulation? I don't think that it is. Simply because, again, we've been seeing this separation of Esme from her sisters. We've been seeing this compassionate side for her. And I think this is really, again, part of her individual self coming out. And I do believe that this will lead to further complications going forward. However, it does make for a nice little mini break inside the inner circle. Meanwhile, at our evil AA meeting, I know that's cruel. AA is a very positive organization, has had great impacts on changing and helping people's lives. I probably shouldn't say that. But still, that's what it looks like. I mean, come on. Coffee, donuts, and hate. It's what brings Purifiers together. So, yeah. Here we are trying to find Jace, still attempting to be the good guy, despite the fact being surrounded by a group that really isn't resonating with him, despite all of his efforts. This is a group that wants nothing more to do than just to bust mutant heads. Shoot, kill, attack, beat. That's really what he's fighting up against. And despite all of his efforts, I don't think that he is going to turn the direction of this group much. And, you know, but he's trying. He is pointing out, look, people don't like hate groups. They're not going to back you up. You're here to protect families, right? Again, that old thing. They're just here to protect families and beat up people they hate. But he's trying to focus on that positive end. You're here to help families. But, you know, PTA moms aren't going to want to back a hate group. We want to show that they are part of the solution. And he does kind of an interesting few points here, you know, how mutants are using the system against Sentinel services and the rest of the cops. They can go into a church and proclaim, ask for asylum, and nobody can touch them. But the Purifiers, they're not tied down by such regulations. Regulations, those laws are there for a reason. Specifically this, to keep people from just chasing down and burning down churches in order to get to the people that are inside. So it was just kind of an interesting evolution here of what we're seeing is Jace's journey. Jace's journey. Yeah, that does sound a little funny. And even to the point where we get to the big fight and Shatter coming out and trying to take the small arms fire. But he's got to kill, which means other people got to, you know, it's, again, and we get in interesting situations, whereas people, you have the hate group that specifically the Purifiers are there, they want to shoot people. They want to shoot, they want to bust up mutants. Jace is trying to get them to capture mutants and turn them over to Sentinel services. But that's never where this is going to go, and that's where that whole fight, that whole encounter there with Shatter, that's where things are going to evolve down into. I am curious where they get, like, military grade, was it Nymex knockout gas? Shit doesn't exist. Can't just shoot this in and knock people out. But, okay. People don't have mutant powers either, so we can go with it. But again, this is where this encounter is going to happen. The mutants are not going to turn themselves in. They're not going to turn themselves certainly into a non-police group, into the Purifiers, which are known for beating and killing mutants. So that Shatter's death is unfortunate, but very, I think, necessary in order to move this story forward, to see where these things are going to go to. And that final shot that we saw with Jace holding that tiny piece of Shatter left, that was so weird when he got shot, and it's just, you got all those pieces of Shatter coming out. It's not bleeding, they're just little fractured bits of, I don't know, obsidian. They kind of looked like just pouring out of him. I mean, that was a very disturbing image. But seeing Jay sitting there at the end while his Purifier buddy is trying to, the police deputy is trying to say, no, we did, this is great, it's the biggest bust that we ever had, come on, join us, they're buying drinks. That Jace is sitting there, not necessarily joining in, but pouring over this small piece. I think he is starting to see where this road is going. And he really is going to have to make that choice, probably sooner rather than later, to go that this group doesn't want to be the good guy. They just want to bust heads. And he has to figure out, ultimately, where he wants to be. Does he want to just bust mutant heads, or does he really still want to be fighting for something a little bit more noble? Now, of course, the officer did point out that Shatter was supposed to be killed in Atlanta, and therefore this is proof that Jace's obsession of having lost his wife and everything does have some reality base to it. But he's already seen the Struckers. He already knows that. This isn't really new information for him. So, does it confirm for a larger public? Sure, but does it really change? Does it really change the equation for Jace? I don't think so. So Cate and Lauren get to do their own little road trip, going out to find Dr. Taylor, get a little more information on Rebecca. And what we got to see here is a nice sort of shift from Lauren. Lauren getting hard. Lauren getting cold as soon as the doc was stepping away. Let me just go get my notes. I mean, I love that moment where the moment they mentioned Rebecca, she's pouring the tea and is just like, Though, I mean, if she does have patient-doctor confidentiality and she knows that they were coming to ask about patients, is that really a conversation that should have been happening? How exactly was that scene set up? Minor point, but it did, I was wondering that. But when she does that line, let me go check my notes. Excuse me, I'm just going to walk out of this room right now. Loving that Lauren sees that there is something wrong, identifies it, and walks up and really throws down harshly, trying to get the information on Rebecca, which, again, would make sense. That the connection that she is having with Andy, I love that, again, the dream communication is evolving a little bit more, starting to see she's seeing the change that is going on with Andy, and I think that's hardening her even more. There has to be something that is done. And while initially she might have think that we don't need to go after him, obviously after the meeting with the doctor, all of that has changed. Oh, and about that sort of dream connection, I thought that was really cool while they were having that in the awesome danger room, which we'll get to, is that Lorne was using that bit of information to go and find answers, to look around, see what the evidence, finding the turned inside out safe, touching it and realizing that the damage she can get inside the dream transfers over into real life. Really evolving the connection that's going on between the Strucker kids here, I thought was very cool. But main point, we do get to find a little bit more information on Rebecca, and that is she killed her whole family and turned a guard's head inside out. Ugh. I was expecting that. The whole training sequence, that's actually what I thought was going to happen. We didn't see that, but they were holograms. But yeah, this showing a little bit more of a darker version of Rebecca. And we even get a little hint of that early on when we had that scene between Andy and Rebecca, you know, and they're making their pancakes and they're having fun, and Andy's pancake is a big smiley face, and Rebecca's pancake is like, angry face. Even think that threw Andy off a little bit there. So we're seeing that while the Frost sisters were not born evil, were sort of made evil or harsh, or you know, that the hate was grown inside of them. Rebecca seems a little bit different. Rebecca seems like just a dark individual, and whatever joy and happiness she has is really just a guise over an internal darkness. But how this, again, further hardens Lauren, I think, was great. I mean, because we have Cate that's trying to reach out and be like, I shouldn't put you in this spot. I don't want to lose you in order to get Andy. It's wrong for me to make you go out there. This should be me. And Lauren's like, no, screw that shit. Andy is in a bad place. They are making him stronger. There's a certain point for that. And it's appealing, the Inner Circle story, living in a world where mutants can be all that they can be. And that's why Lorna is there, and that's why I think one of the reasons Esme and the Cuckoos are all there. They believe in that vision of the world. But the fact that they are willing to bring in psychopaths that turn people's heads inside out in order to achieve that end, that's crossing a line. Much like Jace working with the Purifiers. The initial goal may be noble, or you may want to be a good person living in a good world, but when you're working with bad people more than willing to do bad things, that's not something that can maintain. So her hard determination is, we got to get him out, and if we can't get him out, then I'm going to have to fight him and drag his ass out. I think is a nice evolution of Lauren's character and what she's going to need to be able to go up against Andy and the rest of the Inner Circle. And Reid's training begins. Not really entirely his to his excitement. I love the fact that it's Cate that is pushing him to train. She's not scared of her husband, wants him to learn his powers. This is what you got to do. John's going to be there. He's the kind of guy that's going to be able to get you going. You can't medicate yourself. You can't push this away. You have to embrace it. You have to learn to do it. I love how Cate has evolved a lot this season. They made her a much more interesting character, a much stronger character. Reid, on the other hand, man, he is still whiny. What is it with the Strucker parents being whiny? Cate was really whiny last season. Reid's all whiny this season. I mean, I understand that he's going through some difficult times, some personal changes that he doesn't entirely understand. His body's changing and he doesn't know what to do with it. It's like second puberty. But that's the one thing that kind of annoyed me with Reid throughout all of this episode is how just whiny he is, reticent to embrace these changes when it's really something, considering his past and, you know, prosecuting mutants and seeing all this stuff and then seeing his kids sort of evolve and the changes that they have gone through and all this experience with the mutant underground, that he should be like, yeah, let's get in, let's learn how to do this stuff, as opposed to whining and crying and pushing away constantly. I don't want to do it. So I'm really glad that Cate is kind of that forceful push for him to actually do something about this. Nice initial training scene with John. I loved how he turned that very quickly to Reid's complaint. And so, what does John know? How does he? How has Reid manifested his powers before? When he's emotional, when he's angry. So what does he do? He makes him emotional and he makes him angry in order to activate his powers. Sure, that's not the way that you want that to do, you know, but this is a path. It's a journey. It's a process. You got to know how it feels, and then you got to find a way to get to that feeling on your own and control it. So I like that. I like that whole initial scene, and that's really what I was kind of expecting with Reid's journey throughout this. And I really like the kind of directions that it went, because yes, while Reid's a little bit whiny, and why the initial training sequences sort of make sense. And then we get to Baltimore with that great whole sequence, and we're pulling things up, and this is where he gets to use his cop mind of, wait a minute, hate group attacking a church, but nobody is hurt. Why do you attack people but don't hurt them? It's a trap! We got Admiral Ackbar in the corner there. It's a trap! But all of this, I think, is really just, this whole journey was meant in a way for Reid to sort of use his powers to get in the position where, of course, they're like, the only escape route is through this wall, but there's no way to get through it unless somebody happens to break through this wall. So, really kind of manufactured perfectly for Reid to learn to use his powers. Which, of course, he does, and allows them to escape and get out. But that's not where it ends. And that is something that I think that I really appreciated the most throughout this episode. It brings us to our Scene of the Week for this week. And that is, of course, our last scene with Reid. Because we have the expected journey of, he needs to train, he's reticent to train, he can only train when he gets angry, and then they bring him to a moment where he's going to have to access his powers, he's got to dig deep, he's got to find those emotions, and that allows everyone to get out. And that is the normal arc that you would expect in a standard episode. But they took it a little bit further, to the loss of control. And it's a perfect sort of blend, because we have a lot of scenes in the rest of the episode of people moving through these and embracing a new reality. We have Lorna trying to connect with Esme, then feeling betrayed, and then embracing that connection with Esme as she learns a little bit more and finds out about her youth, and that Esme is making this commitment to her and her daughter for protection and so on. So I mean, you had this whole little arc that's going on there. You had Lauren's little arc in there as well. Again, reticent about dealing with Andy, feeling that he just wants to get away, there's no way to help him. Then seeing what he is caught into, and then making that hard decision of going, look, yeah, Andy doesn't want to be here, he wants to stay with the inner circle, but they're crazy and they're bringing in psychopaths. So I got to go in and I got to save him. Get to that solid moment as well. We're seeing that with different parts. Even Jace, like I said at the end there, Wang as he's looking at that final dead piece of shatter there. Maybe Wang, is he really making the right decisions? Is this really the direction he wants to go? These are all kind of big standard little arcs. And then we find Reid finally having access to the powers, and we're dealing with all of that, the fear, and with Shatter's words of like, the more that you try to avoid something, the more that it's going to embrace you, that you got to work these things out. And John talking about you can't just work it through anger, you've got to work these things. Cate, you know, talking about you got to face these things, you can't just medicate it, you got to embrace it. But it goes the other way, that Reid's biggest fear really does manifest. And I think that that's part of his loss of control right here. Is the only way to access this is to access that emotion, that fear. But now that it has been brought up, he can't process it. And that's all that he has. So the one thing that he may have feared the most in accessing his powers is that he would completely lose control, is exactly what happens at the end, where we see just the destroyed bits of furniture through the room, and he is just cowering there in the corner as his powers are moving through his arms and just, don't touch me. Lost that control. Very reticent to Shatter's story in there about when he sort of woke up and found that he was touching everything and had turned it all into crystal. That he really tried to take himself out, which was kind of cool, seeing that that's where that image on that pattern on Crystal's skull came from, on Shatter's skull came from, was him trying to take himself out. You know, and the more that he avoids his fears, the more that they're going to come up. That seems to be exactly where Reid is here at the end of this episode. And it's sad that we don't have Shatter around in order to possibly help him, guide him through. But it makes Reid's journey more interesting, where it's not just a standard arc of, I want to train, I gotta fight through the thing, and then I access my heart, and then boom, everything is fine. But it completely goes the other direction, is now he accesses it, but now he can't stop it. And I don't think this is something that's going to maintain, but it allows this particular journey for Reid, which will only make him stronger in the end. But was just a beautiful moment of panic again throughout all of the triumph we see in the rest of the episode, to see him just falling apart at the end with that darkness and that fear just overwhelming him. I thought was a really nice move for the show to make. All right, just a couple of small things. One, Danger Room! It was so cool. I mean, we don't have the X-Men, so we don't have their official holographic training Danger Room, but the Inner Circle's got one of their own. And that was totally awesome. You got the hologram fruits coming in, and then everybody can use the powers against the training. It was cool. It was such classic X-Men moment right there. Really enjoyed it. Though, like I said, I was expecting Rebecca to be turning those guards inside out, and she just turned them around and lifted them up and dropped them down, which, again, cool, but I think what we saw in the video later on in Dr. Taylor's office, that's more of what she'd probably be doing to the actual guards. Just saying. That's probably going to disturb Andy when he sees that. Alright, and our evil organization, we get a quick little glimpse into the bank that they're going to rob. Creed Financial, which has a long history of messing with mutants. Love that they were behind the whole kick epidemic. Also, again, referring other stuff and you know, previous storylines and such like that. Now, Creed might remind a few of you comic fans that Victor Creed, aka Sabretooth, he's a Creed, but what we might be referring to is not him, but his son Graydon Creed, the son of Mystique and Sabretooth, who was abandoned as a child and grew up hating mutants with a passion. Developed a lot of political, financial motions and so on. Was eventually assassinated and such. But this could be a glimpse into a new villain for everyone to deal with. I love when we have these nice little comic Easter eggs. So keep an ear out for Grade and Creed being behind Creed Financial. Again, I guess when you're abandoned by your mutant parents, that could instill a little bit of hate in you too. And he used his power to go right back after mutants, creating the kick epidemic, and of course being behind Esme's cloning and evil training there. Oh, and does Reva have a little love life developing out there? Certainly seem to be sending some text. And it does make me question, where is she going all the time? I mean, she does have the date going on with one thing, but she also seemed to be having a conversation with someone else that seemed to be a bit more intense. Is she really the boss, or is there someone else that she answers to? Not sure, but there's definitely other elements we're yet to be made aware of. All right, well, I think that wraps up everything for today. Just, I guess, one small little note. It was Election Day today here in the United States. I hope that you all went out and voted. Regardless of your political affiliation, it is important for everyone to take the time, take the effort, and go out and vote. Make sure your voice is heard. So I hope you all had a chance, who were of voting age here in the U.S., did get a chance to go out to the polls and try and make your voice heard. But that is going to wrap us up for tonight. Thank you so much for joining me with this review. And if you enjoyed it, you know what to do. Go ahead and hit that like button. Thoughts, ideas, and comments, throw those right down in the section below. You can always catch me on Twitter and Instagram. I am at DarrenJakes. Please subscribe if you're not. Quick and easy, one button hit. Catch all these reviews. Plus, we're doing Walking Dead, and we got some great things coming up in the spring, so it should be very exciting. Go ahead and join. And I'll throw up a couple of our latest reviews right here you can check out. So, that's it for me. I'm D, and I'm out of here. Catch you guys next time. Bye-bye.